Hey everybody, this is Mike Petralia, Trags, with a special episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, wrapping up the Cincinnati Bengals approach to the 2025 NFL Draft, brought to you by the CLNS Network and, of course, our great friends at the Game Time app. All right, it's in the books. The Bengals have made their 6 selections. They have reportedly signed anywhere between 10 and 12 undrafted free agents. If that is true, if the Bengals have drafted 12 undrafted free agents and the 6 draft selections, that would take their roster number up to 88. They currently had 70 players signed and on the roster heading into the draft. Yeah, the 6 players, that takes them up to 76. And then the undrafted free agents anywhere between 10 and 12. And you see where the Bengals would land in terms of their current roster. I'm going to break this down in terms of what I like and what I don't like as much about the way the Bengals approached it. I think there's a lot to like about what the Bengals did, and we'll get to one or two areas where I think they could have done better. I think they could have address some needs that they needed to address going into the draft. But first of all, let's recap the first or the draft picks, the 6 selections that were made. On day one, it was Shamar Stewart, the defensive edge out of Texas A&M. Demetrius Knight Jr., the linebacker out of South Carolina. He went on in the second round, 49th overall. Dylan Fairchild was also selected on Friday night. He was 81st overall. He is the guard out of Georgia. I like that pick a lot. We'll get more to whether or not they could have gotten him a little bit later in the draft, and the Tate Ratledge effect. Of course, Tate Ratledge is Fairchild's teammate at the University of Georgia. Could the Bengals have perhaps moved up and taken Tate Ratledge in the second round? He eventually wound up going to the Detroit Lions. So we'll see exactly how it pans out for the Bengals in taking Dylan Fairchild in the third round. The Bengals then took their second linebacker of the draft with their first pick on Saturday, round number 4, 119 overall. Barrett Carter, a linebacker, a true stack linebacker, as defensive coordinator Al Golden called him, out of Clemson. He was 119 overall. The Bengals interviewed him at the Combine, really liked what they saw and heard from Barrett Carter. So we'll get to talking about Barrett Carter in a little bit. Then there's the 5th round pick, 153 overall, Jaylen Rivers, the offensive lineman out of Miami, Florida. He's one of the more versatile players that the Bengals took in the 2025 NFL draft because he can play tackle, but they listed him as a guard, and the Bengals expect Jaylen Rivers to compete as a guard, perhaps a swing tackle down the road, but he is going to head into training camp and the offseason activities with the Bengals competing for a guard spot. So Jaylen Rivers, 6'6", 320 pounds. Dylan Fairchild, by the way, he's no small can of potatoes. He is 6'5", 325 pounds. You can see where the Bengals were going along their offensive line. We'll also get to that as well. And their final draft pick of the afternoon, 6th round, 193 overall, Taj Brooks, running back, a stout running back, if you will, out of Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. The thing I like about Taj Brooks is, first of all, his confidence. He comes in thinking that he can fit in right away, be one of the go-to backs in the Bengals backfield that already consists of Chase Brown, of course. He is definitely the feature back, at least heading into the offseason. But then there's the uncertainty regarding Zach Moss. Has his neck healed? Zach Taylor was asked about it by Ben Baby of ESPN a couple of times in the post-draft news conference on Saturday, and all Zach Taylor would commit to is he's progressing. He's progressing. Now, what's interesting about that is the two sides, the Bengals and Moss, reworked the second deal of that 2-year, $6 million contract just a week earlier. And that would give you the indication that the Bengals believe Moss is making good progress, and he figures to be part of the running back room heading into next season. But again, I think the Bengals want to make sure that he is 100% before they clear him for full activity and make a commitment to depending on him during the season. So they have Zach Moss, they have Samaje Perine, they have Chase Brown, and now they have Taj Brooks. And certainly with back-to-back 1,500-yard seasons on the ground at Texas Tech, including last season where he caught passes for over 200 yards receiving, he is a dual threat. There's no question about that. And certainly Zach Taylor and Dan Picture, the offensive coordinator, want as many weapons that they can put in the holster of Joe Burrow as possible for each week of the NFL season. So those are your 6 picks of the Bengals. Now, again, I'm going to go over some of the undrafted free agents in terms of what's been reported out there. Nothing is official. We should really emphasize and stress this until the players sign on the dotted line. And when they do, then the Bengals and NFL teams can start officially adding them to the roster. But there are reports of anywhere between 10 and 12 players. And as soon as I get my paperwork in front of me organized, I'll go over them. Okay. We have 3 wide receivers that the Bengals signed in the undrafted period once the draft ended on Saturday. And I'd be curious to get your feelings out there in the Twitter space, in the X space, on your thoughts of the Bengals signing Duke wide receiver Jordan Moore, Oklahoma State receiver Rashad Owens, and yes, the Bengals made a Bearcats signing. At least that's what's been reported out there, wide receiver Jamoy Mays. So the Bengals add 3 receivers. They only added 1 safety. They didn't draft a safety, and I find this a little bit odd. And again, we'll get to that and what I like and didn't like about the way the Bengals approached the draft. But the safety that they reportedly are interested in and have gotten a verbal commitment to, at least at this point, as we record this podcast and bring it to you live on Twitter on this Sunday afternoon. Shaquan Loyal out of Rutgers. He is a safety. Will he be able to come in and push the likes of Geno Stone, of Jordan Battle, who was the Bengals spent a lot of draft capital in 2024 on him, or 23, I should say. Will he be able to come in and push Jordan Battle? Then there's Dejon Anthony, who the Bengals did draft in 2024, and Tyson Anderson. Everybody forgets about Tyson Anderson, but he has tremendous speed. He is arguably the Bengals' best player on special teams, a gunner extraordinaire. What about Tyson Anderson's role as a safety in the Bengals secondary? We can talk about that a little bit as well. Bengals did reportedly add a defensive tackle from Notre Dame in Howard Cross. Then the Bengals, maybe to give Cal Adamitis some competition, signed Michigan long snapper William Wagner. Then there are a couple of quarterbacks that are reportedly, the Bengals, or at least one, I should say, interested in. Auburn 6-year quarterback Peyton Thorne. Bengals will bring him in. Also Arizona running back Quali Conley, and BYU offensive tackle Caleb Etienne. So that's where the Bengals stand right now after a busy Saturday, actually after a busy Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And, I see some of the comments, and I'm going to try and get to them right now. First of all, I see Chirag out there. The overall draft grade I give the Bengals, I stay away from draft grades for the simple reason you don't know how these players should be graded until they are in the NFL at least 2 or 3 years. And once you get an idea of what they can do over a 2 or 3 year period, then you can more appropriately grade what the Bengals did over the last 3 years. Sure, I can go out there and say, give the Bengals a C+. And you can grade them perhaps on the needs that were addressed. But in terms of grading them on the talent that was addressed. There's no way of doing that right now. So if you're asking me how I would grade the Bengals on the needs that were addressed, I'd say a B, a solid B. Here is why. The Bengals going into this draft needed to address, obviously, their interior offensive line, the guard position. They went out and added, as I mentioned, two of them in the draft in Dylan Fairchild and Jaylen Rivers. They absolutely needed to get depth in the linebacker room. They double dipped and did that, got two of arguably the top 10 linebackers on various scouting reports out there, including obviously the athletic Dane Brugler does a phenomenal job with the Beast. He had both of these players in his top 10, and Demetrius Knight Jr. and Barrett Carter. The only argument with Demetrius Knight Jr. is taking him in the second round. Did the Bengals need to reach for him? Zach Taylor said on Saturday, yes, they did need to reach for him because they were not confident at all that he would be there had they let him go into the third day of the NFL draft. So that's where the Bengals addressed a need in the linebacker room. They needed to add depth on the edge. They certainly spent draft capital in taking one of the top three edges on most draft boards in Shamar Stewart. This was the year of not just Shedeur Sanders, but it was the year of defensive impact players in the first round in the NFL draft. The Bengals believe they got one of those in Shamar Stewart. Everybody knows, and we talked about this on Saturday, he did not produce at the college level. He did not produce at Texas A&M in his 3 years there. He really didn't get on the field much in year number one. Year number two and year number three, he got better and better. But when all was said and done, he only wound up with 4.5 sacks and 11 tackles for loss in his 3 years at Texas A&M. That number, I don't think there's any secret here, that number has to improve when he starts playing for the Bengals. But the Bengals did address the edge position. And now when you take a look at the depth chart of the Bengals, and we've got it right here, and I'm going to go over it, at the defensive edge position, Trey Hendrickson's not going anywhere. Now it's a matter of, do the Bengals get a deal done with Trey Hendrickson before training camp, or does that contract situation wind up running into the season? Maybe Trey Hendrickson sits out a game or two. Which path does it take? But the path the Bengals are not going down now, because the draft is over, is trading them. So if you assume that Trey Hendrickson's going to be on the roster, you have Shamar Stewart, a true two-way edge. He can set the edge in the run game. He's got to finish tackling a little bit better, but he can set the edge in the run game, and he can certainly bull rush and get pressure on the quarterback. Yes, he's got to do a better job getting the quarterback to the ground, but he can get pressure on the quarterback. So the Bengals feel they have that position set. Now, to start the season, Shamar Stewart's not going to come in and start right away. I'd be very surprised at that. It's probably going to be Joseph Osai, who they signed to a 2-year deal. A 1-year contract extension. The Bengals actually getting a deal done with David Mulugeta, but a 1-year deal extension for Joseph Osai has been executed. So Osai will return. Cam Sample, he's coming back off the ruptured Achilles early in training camp last year. That really put the Bengals back, and I say it so many times, not enough people talk about the impact that injury had on the Bengals defense in 2024. They are anticipating getting Cam Sample back at full strength this year. So you have that piece. You have Cedric Johnson. And oh, by the way, the first round pick in 2023, Miles Murphy. You throw Shamar Stewart into that mix, and the Bengals at this point feel that they have a lot of depth now at that position. They need production to go along with that depth. No question about that. But with the number of bodies that I just listed off to you, the Bengals feel like they're in good shape. Again, I don't feel the same way about the safety position. It's one of the areas I would have liked to have seen the Bengals really attack a little bit more aggressively in the draft. But when you only have 6 picks, and you don't trade back, which the Bengals didn't, and they don't normally like to do that unless the deal is too good to turn down, as Zach Taylor mentioned this week. There were many, many calls about trading back and adding some more picks, but in the end, it didn't work out for the Bengals. So the Bengals stayed with 6 picks. And when you only have 6 picks, the number of options and the way you can manipulate it is limited. And that's the way the Bengals approached this draft. They went at it with a pretty straightforward approach and got most of their needs fulfilled. Again, we're not talking about production. We're talking about needs. We're talking about bodies that they feel can come in and help Al Golden's defense perform at a much higher level than it did in the last 2 years under Lou Anarumo. Again, this is the Bengals Jungle Roar podcast, post-2025 NFL Draft Edition, brought to you by our great friends at the Game Time app. Game Time app is the best place to buy tickets online. Game Time makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard-to-get playoff seats. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat. And don't forget this, their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. Game Time has also zone deals. That saves you even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. They also have last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater, and much, much more. They have all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. This is my personal favorite on the Game Time app, seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you go out and buy them. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. My name is Mike Petraglia, Trags. I'm back with the Jungle Roar podcast, Bengals Draft Postmortem 2025 edition. And again, we have a lot more to get to. We were just talking about why I gave the Bengals a B on the draft. And that is not because of the talent that was acquired, but the needs that the Bengals really addressed going into the draft. That, to me, is what NFL draft time is all about. And it's the only way you can really grade any draft. You can't grade it based on the players, because those players, whether they were great in college or just middling in college, or what the Bengals really stressed this year, captains and leaders in college, you don't know until they perform at the NFL level just how good the value was when you select them during the draft. So that's what I liked about the Bengals draft. Really, the only negative to me, and this is a big concern, and anybody who's watched the Bengals post Jesse Bates understands this full well. Their safety room has not been consistent, and it has been a point of weakness on the field. They have tried to put Dax Hill into that position, and he really wasn't comfortable in 2023. You could tell that right away when they moved him into that position. He struggled. Last year, they moved him to outside corner. There was all that talk about competing with DJ Turner in training camp. Dax Hill showed that he could handle the position, and while DJ Turner has tremendous quickness and speed on the outside, Dax Hill won that competition and won it opposite Cam Taylor-Britt. What happens? Of course, in October, Dax Hill suffers a season-ending ACL injury. He is making very good progress. Talked to us in the media, in the locker room this past week, and he should be in line to start training camp and pretty much head out onto the field ready to contribute to the Bengals defense. What position will it be? Will it still be the outside corner? Will they move him inside? And a lot of people assume this, take over for Mike Hilton at the nickel back or a nickel corner position in the Bengals defense? Or Could the Bengals move Dax Hill back to safety? Probably not. But people who saw Dax Hill play that position said that once he got familiar and used to playing that position, he looked more and more comfortable. Still, he struggled. There's no question about that. He struggled with the vocal part of the job. I think Lou Anarumo really made that point very clear when he talked about Dax and how hard he worked, but how much he did struggle with that position at first. Bengals are going to go into this season with Geno Stone as the free safety. I don't think there's any question about that. He played much better at the end of the season. Probably you could say the last 7 to 8 weeks of the 2024 season. Geno Stone started to look like he was playing free, not recklessly, but he was playing free and really playing on his own without limitation in the secondary. So that's a good sign for the Bengals. What about Jordan Battle? Can Jordan Battle be that downhill impact player, maybe cheat down and play in the box a little bit more this season for the Bengals? They need Jordan Battle to be a positive impact on that defense. They need him to tackle better. They need him to be at least reasonably good at covering the pass, playing pass defense from that position, because if he is not, he becomes a severe liability. The starters in that secondary and at the safety position, you can live with. The depth is where you start to wonder, what are they going to do if Geno Stone or Jordan Battle goes down? What if both of them go down? What are you going to do? You have Dejon Anthony, who made that play at the end of the Kansas City game. That was so close to being a fabulous play and turned into a devastating play that, frankly, Dejon Anthony did not recover from this past season. You could tell his confidence wasn't quite there, and that's a tough spot to put a rookie playing in his second NFL game, but that's what happened to Dejon Anthony. Is he ready to rebound in his second season? Will he have a good offseason and be ready to contribute to the Bengals defense this year? Remains to be seen. And when you talk about Tyson Anderson, terrific special teams player. He is a gunner that certainly Darren Simmons, the special teams coach, relies on quite a bit. And there's no question he's going to be on the roster for special teams. But can they translate his inline speed, which is tremendous, his tackling ability, which is very, very good on special teams? I think everybody has seen that. Anybody who's paid attention to Tyson Anderson moving down the field and making a tackle on a ball carrier, they can see that. Will that, or can that, translate to the safety position? A lot of that has yet to be seen, and you don't want to throw him out there and say hope is never a strategy. And we heard that a lot during the draft this year. We've heard it a lot in the offseason when the Bengals talk about rebuilding their roster, rebuilding the defense. Hope is not a strategy. Planning and putting pieces in place that you can depend on or have a high degree of certainty that you can depend on, that is a strategy. But hope is not a strategy. So the Bengals have to think that Tyson Anderson has made strides in the defensive end of his game. Does he get more of a look-see in the preseason and in training camp? Remains to be seen. But at this point, I don't see how the Bengals really have any other option but to go in that direction. Again, as I look over my notes right here, their only addition the last 3 days in that room was Rutgers safety Shaquan Loyal, and he was an undrafted free agent. So Bengals are going to have to find a way, somehow, some way, to solve that safety problem if this defense is going to be appreciatively better, especially on the back end. And there's always, obviously, the possibility that the Bengals could go out in the second round of free agency that is about to begin and acquire someone that way. Again, remains to be seen. I see a lot of you also asking about whether or not it was a great draft for what the Bengals needed. I think it was. I've been over that now a couple of times here on this pod, on the Jungle Roar pod. I think the Bengals, in terms of what they needed, it was a terrific draft. In terms of the value, again, a lot of people are going to go to the Demetrius Knight Jr. pick. You're talking about a linebacker who's going to turn 25 on July 21st. He is highly, highly regarded by the Bengals personnel and by Al Golden for his maturity, for his ability to play on the ball, off the ball. They can move him around like chess pieces on a chessboard. That's the way they view a guy like Demetrius Knight Jr. He is also a leader. He is a captain. Somebody else who falls into that category is the other linebacker, Barrett Carter. Now, he's more of a stack linebacker, downhill, can play over the middle, can stop the run. And why that's important, I'll tell you why that's important. Bengals, and for very good reason, have been criticized over the last couple of years for not being able to stop the run. And if you cannot stop the run in the AFC North, you're going nowhere. And a couple of years ago, we found out what that was like when the Bengals went 1-5 in the AFC North. Last year, they were certainly better in the division. But again, there were games, especially against the Steelers at Paycor Stadium, against the Ravens, both times where they had leads and couldn't protect them because they couldn't stop the run. Defense got tired in the second half. When the defense got tired, they blew the leads and lost the games. That can't happen this year if the Bengals want to go where they want to go. They have to be able to stop teams on second and medium and third and short. And to do that, you have to be able to stop the run. You have to force teams to throwing the ball and then expect your defensive backs to do a good job of taking away passing plays. And it all works in conjunction, all works together. If your machine on defense is working like it should, if all the cogs are spinning in the right gears the way they should, that's the way it should play out. But the Bengals have not done a good job of stopping the run. You need good linebacker play behind a defensive line that can stop penetration. And the team that wins at the defensive line or at the line of scrimmage is the team that is going to be able to run the ball and control the ball. The Bengals want to get back to being able to do that. Doesn't mean you run the ball on offense more when Joe Burrow is your quarterback, but you must be able to stop the run when you're talking about defense. Now, about what the Bengals want to do with Al Golden's defense. A lot of talk about filling different positions along the front seven. We've talked about the defensive edge. We've talked about, not as much, but the defensive tackle position and the linebacker position. What the Bengals did was they added a defensive edge, they added 2 linebackers, and in free agency, they added TJ Slayton, the free agent out of Green Bay, to a room that already includes BJ Hill, McKinley Jackson, and Chris Jenkins Jr. Why am I going over all of these names? Because the way Al Golden sees his defense is not just 2 guys playing in the middle, 2 guys playing on the edge, 2 guys over the ball as linebackers. He looks at it as, how many pieces can I move around to give the offense different looks? How can I fill different spots with different player personnel and different looks? That's what Al Golden believes he has accomplished. That is the overhaul that is taking place on the Bengals defense. Obviously, we have to see it on the field. We have to see it in the training camp, preseason, and then see how it really unfolds once the regular season begins. But that's what Al Golden is doing with all of these pieces. And now when you look at the Bengals defense and you look at the depth that they have in the front seven, Al Golden believes he's going to be able to, A, stop the run better, and B, get more pressure from different spots on the field and not just rely on Trey, third down and long, send Trey Hendrickson after the quarterback. NFL offenses and protection schemes are a little bit more complicated and involved than that. So you have to come up with different ways of getting to the quarterback, creating pressure at the line of attack, at the point of attack and on the line of scrimmage, and creating pressure for offensive linemen. And the Bengals and Al Golden feel that they have done that in this off season. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching this episode of the Jungle Roar podcast live on the X. It has been brought to us by our great friends at the Game Time app and CLNS Media. Of course, we'll have complete coverage on the Jungle Roar podcast YouTube page, youtube.com/Jungle Roar Pod, and be sure to follow all of our content at clnscincy.com. Until next time, I'm Mike Petraglia. Keep that jungle roaring.